I'm Ari Medlin, here with Rachel Poley, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. We are on episode 75, and this week's question is, what are the benefits of using Wattpad? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss a show. If you enjoy our episode, please do give it a like.
This week, we have a special guest joining us, so please help us welcome author Chris Harvey to the show. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Tell us a little bit about your writing background, how long you've been writing, when did you start, things like that.
So I'm a hobbyist writer, I would say. I've got another job. I'm a teacher in the day. So I've been writing for about 10 years, just kind of a bit of free stuff, a bit of a few paid for stories, but it's more of a hobby than anything else. I did do some writing when I was younger, but it kind of didn't go anywhere. I think I spent too much time trying to emulate Terry Pratchett, who's my favourite author. But when my friend started getting into novel writing about 10 years ago, that kind of inspired me to start up again. That's kind of the start of my journey.
That is awesome. I have to say, love Terry Pratchett's work. Love it. Still haven't got all the way through the end of the Discworld. It's like I got through loads, and then obviously he was still producing them. And yeah, and all of them are all packed away at the moment, so I haven't been able to get through them, even though he's now obviously passed on. But yeah, no, I've still got so many books to go through. So we're talking about Wattpad. That is the topic of today's episode. Now, I have never used Wattpad. I think I've seen it, but I've never actually been on it officially to like use it as a writer. So can you tell us a bit about Wattpad for all those other writers out there who've never used it and some who've never even heard about it?
Yeah, it's partly a way of publishing stories sort of for free, but it's partly a writing community as well. The kind of beauty of it is you can publish and upload stories at your own pace. You can either write some story, edit it, whatever you want to do with it, put it up, a complete story. You can write it in bits and pop it up. You can put it up as you go and actually write into the editor that's on Wattpad. So you kind of have your choice of how you update that, and loads of people use it, and it's people from really inexperienced authors to really experienced. There's also lots of extra things on there. So there's things like you can help you create covers. You can have extra sections for characters, for any images you want to put up, any videos that you've recorded about your book. And then when your book's up there, you can obviously read other people's stories. You can read your own. You can comment on your own. You can respond to comments, and then you can vote. You've got a little star where you can vote for stories. So you can kind of see how popular it is. And they have a nice little sort of rating system. So you might be number 20 in romance or number 15 in sci-fi, depending what tags you put on. And then there's also a lot of competitions and things on there. So they have something called the Whatties, which personally I've never entered, where you've got within a calendar year. It's not January to December. I don't know the exact dates. If you've written a book, you can send them into the Whatties, and then if you win that award, you get a little sort of rosette and you're a Whattie winner on there. And they've also done a lot of things as well with kind of media stuff. They have a media department. So one of my books I put on there, I've clicked saying, yes, you can make it into a movie if you want. It's not going to happen, but I can dream. So they do make things into movies and other things. I think the biggest movie that's come out is The Kissing Booth. I've watched it, but it's quite a big movie. The only issue I'd say with it is there is a lot of teen fiction on there, particularly people going out with people like Justin Bieber and Harry Styles and getting all loved up, and so that there was quite a big community of teen fan fiction on there. But generally, it's quite a nice writing community, and everyone's really supportive. And any ability range can go up there, and you can update.
See, so a lot of that I didn't realise. Now I had heard of Wattpad, and somebody I knew who used it they used it to put the serial story up. So they did it in like episodes, if you will. And that's kind of how I knew. I didn't know there was all the voting things, or even that you could comment on them, or the idea you could put characters and covers. That's actually a lot more interactive than I realised. So that's quite an interesting thought. Because I just thought it was you put up a story and you could serialize it. That's the part I always knew about, that you could serialize it. So if you had a book, you didn't have to put the whole thing or a whole story. You could literally put it in chapters or something. I'm not surprised that there's a lot of like teenage fanfic. Seems to be everywhere.
Yeah, you've got to wade through a lot of it to find the right thing. I mean, they've even got an app now actually where you can download the app, and there's they've got two apps. They've got one which is the general Wattpad app, and they've got another one. Again, I've not used this, but it's I think called Wattpad Tap or something, and it's only got complete stories on it, kind of like a Kindle kind of idea, but just for Wattpad stories. So, and they've also recently updated. Again, I haven't used this, but they've updated to you can actually now have paid stories. I don't know if you need a premium membership for that, but you can actually put your stories up and people can pay to view them. So you can make a bit of a model. I think when I first used it, it was very much put your story up. You might get a vote. There was community boards, but they've kind of taken those down now, and it's more commenting on individual stories. But that was what it was. Whereas now they're with the media section and films and all the extra bits like adding characters and videos and all the awards. I think they're expanding it like quite a lot.
See, I didn't realize that Wattpad had all of these different things, because I am on Wattpad. I have 2 novellas on there, and I haven't checked it in so long, that I knew about the competitions and I knew about the paywall, because that ended up being a new thing right around the time that I posted my second novella up there, but I've never tried it out. And speaking of the fan fiction, I have to say, I have noticed that a huge part of the Wattpad community, they're all romance writers and readers. I don't know if you've noticed that at all, but I have noticed that there is a ton of romance on there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I found it quite hard. I tend to write stuff on Wattpad, and I have got a serial novel that I wrote over 3.5 years, where I slowly updated it. And I more use it as a tool, as sort of a vehicle to present that. But when I want to get a little bit more serious about publishing things and putting things out there, I tend to I'm going to publish it for free. I'll write it, put it on Wattpad, maybe get some feedback, get votes, see how people do like it, and then I'll edit it, and then I'll put it on something like Smashwords, where I can put it out for free, and it's a audience. But I have noticed that if you write romance, particularly teen romance, you get the biggest audience. You get the biggest number of reads and the biggest number of votes and that sort of things. And like I said, I think they've made 3 or 4 films, and they're all teen romance films.
Yeah.
Oh, we're getting a bit tired of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy reading the odd YA book, but it does feel like it's everywhere. And the idea that like Wattpad has got mostly teen romance in, it's like that's a lot of stuff to go through. I mean, is there a way of filtering? Is there an easy filter for like genre, or is it just kind of like trawling through looking for something that doesn't have angsty teenage stuff in it?
Yeah, there are filters on there, and there are like when I open up Wattpad, my front page has these are reads you would like, but generally at the top it's the romance, and then after that you can go into sci-fi, fantasy, whatever. Interesting when they had the community boards, I used to write on the sci-fi and fantasy community boards, and they were the ones that were least accessed, but there was quite a hardcore sort of group who would actually work on those. And interesting enough, the admins, you get a lot of information from the admins. Most of the admins aren't romance writers. The people who run it and are trying to make it bigger are not the romance writers. So there is a lot more on there than romance. But I think it gets tarred with that brush of it's just romantic teen, YA teen fiction, loved up, and there is a lot of that, but it isn't all about that. I would argue as a negative to Wattpad, if you looking push your work out there and trying to get to a market that you feel you're going to get feedback from, Wattpad might not be the best unless you are really big into YA romance.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, I feel like Wattpad is a hit or miss for most writers, whether you're a veteran writer or you're just getting started. It can very well be hit or miss. And even though Wattpad has a pretty big community, even if the majority of them do seem to be romance, you still need to market whatever you put on Wattpad. And I think Wattpad has a lot of opportunities for any writer. And I like what you said about how you can post your story up on Wattpad and possibly get feedback. And then if you can edit it and publish it on Smashwords. And I've seen people do that. They post on Wattpad and then they'll take it down and they'll self-publish a new updated version of it on Amazon or something. Or there have been plenty of times I've gone to Barnes & Noble and I've seen plenty of new books out in the YA section mostly. And on the cover, it'll have this little badge that says previously a Wattpad novel, because agents will go on Wattpad and they'll pick up all these popular stories and reach out to the authors. So I think hit or miss, but it is a fantastic opportunity for some people.
The thing that I like about it is it's very contained in terms of if you're going to like publish on Smashwords, if you're going to publish on Amazon or go through specific other places that publish for you, you need to know a little bit more, I think, about the design. I mean, I'll say editing, but I use a program for editing because I'm a hobbyist writer, so I can't afford to pay the mega bucks to people to edit it. But you need to know more about that. You need to know more about formatting and all these extra things. Whereas Wattpad is all it doesn't matter what format you write it in. You can actually copy and paste anything in any format. It will default to its set format. If you don't know how to do cover design, you can click a button and it can make you a quick cover, and you can move things around. But they're not the best covers, but it will make it for you, will help you make it. And it's very, very easy. I mean, for my serial novel, that's why I chose to use Wattpad. I had been using it before, and I've used it for some short stories, but I chose to use it because I didn't have to worry about the sort of footfall that you get through a blog. So if I was updating each week, and just in people do serial novels through a blog, and if you're updating that week and putting on your blog page, you get a limited amount of footfall. Don't know what the electronic version of footfall is, but you get that limited amount. Whereas in Wattpad, at least you've got people are going to be seeing it, and also you don't have to worry about editing it. And in terms of, I did edit it, but editing it in terms of making everything look right and in the right format and everything, it just goes up and straight into that format, and then it straight away tells you when it was last updated. And if you're on chapter 43, it's all contained within one book, so the reader can easily look at chapter 43, notice that you put it on, maybe on Twitter or on your blog or Instagram or whatever, click on it, read a little bit, and go, this is really interesting, and then it's really easy for them just to click on the table of contents and go straight to chapter 1 and then start reading it again. So that's one thing I do like about it, it's well designed, a place where you can actually upload your work and people can read it, and you don't have to worry about all these extra bits, which maybe if you're going to self-publish or go to a publishing company, these things you have to worry about a little bit more.
A well-designed website is a good website, and a user-friendly website is also a good website.
Yeah.
So with that said, you kind of already started talking about this a little bit. Why did you start using Wattpad? What benefits did you think that Wattpad would give you as a writer?
I think it was just a way to get my work out there, to link to it. And that's kind of what I like about it, is that if I ever get frustrated and I think I'm working on a novel, I'm working on something, I just want to get some work out, quite often write a short story. I've got another book where I'm slowly writing flash fiction, and I've got another poetry collection. I mean, my poetry is terrible. I have a poetry collection on there. And if I'm just I just need to get something out, I want something out there just so I can say I've written something else, and plowing through my novels, I sometimes just stop. I write a poem, I write one of these flash fiction. I've set these books up on purpose so I can write something quickly. 2 or 3 days, I can have something ready. I can have something ready, edited, looks okay, stick it up there. And then it means I feel good in myself because I've got something else out there. And B, it shows that I'm still out there. I'm still doing something. I'm still writing. I'm not just stuck behind a desk in my free time trying to get a novel out, and my potential target audience are seeing nothing. I mean, whereas if every now and then I put a poem up, every now and then I put maybe a preview of a book up, at least I'm giving people something. And I don't know if they want it, at least I'm giving them something.
I mean, as long as you write for yourself, that's all that matters. And if people read it and they enjoy it, then great. But it sounds like Wattpad is mainly an outlet for you, so you can get your work out there and you can keep on writing and enjoy your writing, but you're also free to do other things, and you don't have to worry about the business side of writing. Yeah,
I think definitely, yeah. I've got a few projects on the go that are taking absolutely ages, and the reason they're taking absolutely ages is because I have a limited amount of time, and then they're almost my passion. This is the passion I really want to work on. And I've got these other ideas in the back of my head, which that'd be cool. Sometimes a poem will just pop into my head, and I'll be like, that sounds really interesting. And Wattpad allows me to kind of get that release out and get it out there. And then I can go back to almost what I'm now defining as my passion projects, the stuff that I'm working on. I mean, I think I've got 2 novels written that I'm currently editing. One of them I'm re-editing. I've edited and I was going to put it out, and then I re-edited it. And I've got another novel which I put out, and then I thought, I want to change a few things. So I put that on Amazon, and now I'm re-editing to release the second version. But those, I think from listening to the podcast a lot and doing the Merry Writer, I know about both of you have been re-editing and going back through novels and, trying to get it perfect, which is what I'm doing with some of my work. And I'm kind of when it frustrates you, at least I can say, that's there on Wattpad. You can have a look at it, and if you like, it's free. And if someone says to me, this is brilliant, what if you do this, this, and this? Then maybe I could develop them further. But for me, they are that release. Here's the passion project I'm working on. Here's the release. Here's the ones that I've released just to get stuff out there. And Wattpad allows me to do that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, yeah, me and Rachel, we have our passion projects, and they take so much time. I mean, what I think I'm up to 23 pages for the outline, just the outline. you know.
Yeah.
18,000 words for the outline, it's ridiculous. So I can totally appreciate having a place where you can be putting things and so have active writing now. Like when I was creating flash fiction, I was putting that on my website, and that was the sort of thing. It was like you felt like you weren't getting anywhere with the passion projects. It was like, oh, write a flash fiction, put it up there. So I think with Wattpad, that will be quite good because, as you said, you're getting feedback as people come and see it. It's getting your name out there. It's, you know, keeping you fresh in people's minds. And just a point, I actually like your poetry. I have seen that on YouTube where you read your poetry out. So
Badly, yeah.
Poetry, no, it's good, and you read it very well. I think it's very clear that you're a teacher and that you've obviously had to use Zoom when teaching students throughout the pandemic. It's very noticeable because I think you speak quite well on Zoom, whereas, you know, you can tell people who aren't used to using Magform and camera and everything. So yeah, no, I think you do really well, and I've always enjoyed them on your YouTube channel. There you are. I'm doing a pimping of your YouTube channel.
I keep doing it because I don't get many views, I'll tell you. Well, thank you very much for that. I mean, in terms of the poetry, I know we're going slightly off a tangent here. I'm very much I use the term realist. That sounds wrong, but I'm going to use it. I'm very much a realist in that I've read some poetry. In fact, someone asked me to review their poetry collection, and I did. And it was nice, but it was all a bit floaty and reading into things and similes and metaphors, which I didn't think quite worked. Whereas when I write poetry, I like to say, you know, you don't have to think about this. This is my feelings. This is my point of view. And Wattpad allows me to come up with a poem, and rather than having a poetry collection, which for me is not something I'm really that bothered about marketing, I just come up with the odd poem or the odd idea things in my head, and I go, that would work as a poem. And Wattpad gives me that opportunity to almost push myself into that area, which I wouldn't really think about doing anyway. And yeah, from that, obviously, I read them out on YouTube, which has pushed me more into using YouTube. And like I said, someone asked me to review their poetry collection. I did question them and say, you do know the poetry I write, don't you? You sure you want me to review it? But they were like, yeah, no, that'd be really good. So, but then again, I think that's come through Wattpad. That if I didn't have Wattpad there, I wouldn't be publishing that poetry. It'd probably just a little bit of a project for me that I would write something down and then it would get thrown in the corner. Whereas I kind of feel, if I stick on Wattpad, no one's judging me too much. So let's see what happens.
I'll be honest, I never even considered Wattpad for poetry. It's always been in my head. It's for stories, it's for novels and things like that. I never even thought, well, obviously other type of writing. So that's actually quite good. See, learning things all the way through this.
I mean, there is one point which is quite good, is Wattpad we use Wattpad for different things. So there is, some people have put up sort of preview chapters of their novels. They put it on Wattpad because it's nice and easy to stick it there. Some people put like little prequels and things. So I've got a novel out and a novella out. I'm considering writing a prequel. So it's like a fancy one. Some previous missions are mentioned in the novella. And I'm like, well, I might do a prequel as a free one that someone reads. And that was something I considered putting on Wattpad. And then people reading, if they like it, then they might go and buy the actual novella. But there's also some big names on there as well. There's Margaret Atwood. She has some stuff on there. I think she started a couple of years back doing some sort of an award or something that she was promoting through Wattpad. And then and she's got her own account on Wattpad, and I don't think she updates it very often. It's got sort of Q&As on it. It's got explanations of how she wrote stuff or why she wrote things. And it's quite interesting. And there's a few others. I can't think of any other authors on there at the moment, but there's a few others. But Margaret Atwood is pretty massive. And what they've started doing, I've noticed Wattpad have started doing, is when they do competitions, rather than doing a separate page for competition, they release the competition as if it were a book. So you go to the Wattpad site and you go to the book, and then one will be terms and conditions, chapter 2 will be a little bit more information about it. So yeah, there's plenty of like different things you can do on there, from poetry, short stories, flash fiction, novels, novellas, Q&A stuff, background information. They don't really, well, I've never known them to complain about anything being on there unless it's offensive.
So in that sense, since we've now kind of covered a lot of things about Wattpad, and honestly, so many things I didn't know, which not that I'm saying I'm like everybody else and everyone's exactly like me, but I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there who didn't know a lot of this either. So with that in mind, what advice would you give to writers who may be thinking about trying Wattpad, or who may have never heard of it and now from this think, I might want to give that a go? What are the benefits and advice of using this?
Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination. That's about it. What I would say is don't worry about being perfect on it. I'm not even saying this lightly. There's some terrible things on there, really badly written. So you're not going to be that bad. There's some absolutely brilliant, phenomenal stuff, but there is some terrible things as well. So I would say don't worry about being perfect. I think it's great for a development opportunity for you to go and put stuff out there and see more what your audience think, rather than, I know when we go onto a lot of social media, it's very much authors with authors, and even when you're trying to push a book or feedback on something, it's very much like talking to an author rather than a reader. So I think you're talking more to readers on Wattpad than you are, although there are other authors on there, but you are quite often talking to people who are on there because they want to read as well as write. And also there is a section for paid for stories, but the majority of people I would suggest, okay, again, I haven't looked into this, whether you need the premium to do paid for. And they've also brought in like a tips thing as well, like buy me a coffee style thing where you can tip authors if you like their work. But stories ultimately are free. They're free stories. Get your ideas out there. Personally, I don't like it. It's only a personal thing where you put something up for free and then you take it down and you try and sell it later. That's just my opinion. I have put something up there for free and then I've released it as a paid book, but I've added extra bits to it. And I've added 7 or 8 short stories to it, saying, well, if you pay for it, then you get a few extra bits. So what I would say is, try putting stuff up there that maybe you're not considering publishing elsewhere. You're not considering selling, maybe development things or side projects, or things where you want some feedback. I think it's perfectly acceptable to put up, from my opinion, that is, a couple of chapters of a book and get feedback on it, and then use that to finish writing the rest of the book and then sell the book. That's slightly different. So it's very much, I would say, try to use it to develop ideas, try to use it to get your name out there, try to use it to get your work out there and feedback, and don't worry about it being perfect. If you're there for the likes and the love, and you want to do the best, write romance stories. If you write romance stories, you're probably going to do pretty well. But the main thing, if you want to get your stories being read well and get the feedback, you need to, like most of the places, you need to read other people's stories. You need to follow other people. You need to comment on their stories. I found, as I've moved a little bit away from Wattpad, focused on other things, my number of reads and my feedback and my follows has gone down drastically, because I'm not keeping up with all the things that are going on Wattpad so much. When I started writing and I put my first bit of work on there, that was my main source of putting work out, or putting writing out. Since I've kind of like moved on to other areas as well, I check it. I do try and read stuff and I do try and leave comments, but I've noticed it's dropped. You do need to keep up with the community side. I would also say tags are important. When you write a story, there's a set of tags. You get this nice idea where you're number whatever in sci-fi or number whatever in this or that. If you put really obscure tags, I can get quite high numbers as well. I think I got up to my serial novel. I got up to I think it was number 3 in totalitarian at one point. Very niche, but at least I felt good about myself. So the better the tags you use, don't know about more specific, but use some generalized ones, some specific ones, then the higher your rating will be on those sort of, these are the top lot for this week. Yeah, and finally, I think the last thing I would say is the social media aspect of it. It's not enough just to put it on Wattpad, follow a few people, comment on their books, maybe vote for them with a little star, and think that's it. You've got to still be promoting yourselves on other social media. Otherwise, it will just sit there and then slowly sink to the bottom and disappear from the amount of stuff that's going on. I suppose one final thought on that as well is how you update it. This is another thing that I found. If you write a whole novel and you put a whole novel on Wattpad, so it might be a massive novel, it might be 70, 80,000 words plus. If you put it on in one go, it's there as brand new on that time you put it in one go. It might last a couple of weeks. And then notice this massively with my serial novel, if you update it, say once a week, put a chapter on a week, it will keep it fresh and keep it at the top. It'll keep saying, oh, latest updated, newest one. That's just a little trick. The trick I learned is I put a short story, a couple of short stories, I put them up in one go. You got quite good traction to start with and then stopped. Then I've got 2 books where one's is a serial novel and the other was like during the World Cup in 2012. I wrote a little story, a mini little sort of flash fiction of my story each day. And that's when I noticed it. I put one up one day and it would get a few reads, and the next one I put up and that would get a few reads. And then those reads added up and added up and added up to then make my book kind of stay quite high for quite a while. And as soon as I stopped updating, it then started to sink again. So that's just a little tip. If you've got everything ready to go, don't stick it all up in one go. You won't get the same traction as if you slowly but surely update it.
So it sounds like engaging with your readers and other writers and consistency are absolute key to using Wattpad.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is about engaging with other people. It's about following and other people. And I find it really tricky being like, I'm almost jealous of people who are like full-time writers, that they can take a chunk of their day and say, this is my social media time. I'm going to go out, I'm going to check social media, I'm going to do a bit of reading, I'm going to comment on stuff. And I'm like that as a teacher all day, and I come home and I'm like, I don't really have that time. And I find for instance, in the summer, I'm now in the summer holidays, and already I've started responding to tweets. I've already started checking how many people have downloaded the books, or if anyone's left reviews. I mean, if I get one download a month, I'm pretty happy these days. But I'm checking that a lot more, and I'm starting to respond to people a lot more because I'm freer. But when I'm working, I don't have that opportunity. But I think if you really want to be a writer, and that's your dream, I'd love to be a writer, but unfortunately for me, it doesn't pay the bills at the moment. And I'm doing another job that I love anyway, so I'm happy to do the writing on the side and be a teacher. But I say, if you want to go for writing and you want to do writing, you need to be, and I think it's not just Wattpad, in anything, you need to be engaging with people, you need to be responding to people, you need to be liking their stuff, talking to them about their work, even if it's saying you don't like it, but in a critical way, in a criticism, you need to be doing that. And I find I just at times, I can see this really clearly as a hobbyist writer, that the pinch points when I'm really busy with my job, like my downloads, my number of reads, my number of like replies and conversations just drops. And then suddenly I have a bit of a free period, then it lifts back up again. So yeah, you really do need to be engaging with other authors, with other readers. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Engagement seems to be the big one everywhere. And it's frustrating because depending on where you are on social media, and if you've got a blog, and if you have like things like Wattpad or anything, the amount of engagement you have to do. It's like these full-time writers who are able to like block out, this is my social media time. It's like, I'll be lucky if I can get back onto social media. It can go weeks because the idea of it can be so overwhelming. So it's nice to react and to make comments and likes and retweets and reaching out to people. But there's also so much drama out there that sometimes you just think, oh no, I need a break from it. And as you said, as soon as you stop doing it, things go down. It's very similar to Google spiders going through a website. If you have a static website and you put stuff up and then you don't update it at all, Google doesn't send its spiders back very often, and you go further down in the rank. Whereas if you have a blog on your website and you post consistently, those spiders are coming back all the time, they're indexing your pages, and you stay higher in the ranks. So there is all these things you've got to know, like you said, stay consistent, put things up regularly, and it's learning all these little things and then finding time to do them. That's so much fun.
I mean, definitely, like I say, with the help of Wattpad, I wrote a serial novel, which again I was getting frustrated with at times because I was updating it every single week, and every week I've got to write 300-400 words at least, and you think, that's not many. And to write it, to edit it, to put it on Wattpad, to then do the blog, to then promote it, took away from a lot of my other writing in the free time I had. But I'll tell you what, my blog was getting loads of hits. Every week I was updating, every week I was updating. And then I don't know if it's arguing my first draft because I was editing it as I was going along, but it's not a fully edited, nice, lovely piece of work. I need to go back, but it's sitting at the moment. I'm not going back to that one yet. I stopped that. I think I finished it a couple of months ago, and I haven't written a blog post since. It's not that I don't want to. It's not that I don't have things to write about, but it's just the fact that other bits of life have got in the way. I took on a new role at work, which meant that at the end of the school year, I had a really, really heavy workload, and I just haven't been able to get on there and blog or to say anything. And then as soon as I stopped writing my serial novel, as soon as I couldn't write a blog because of work, it's just dropped down, and I get like the odd, if I get one a week at the moment, I'm happy. And it was all about that engagement. It's all about putting your name out there, and almost who shouts the loudest wins in that situation. You know what I mean? And you've said it again on the podcast previously. I've seen it mentioned in the Merry Writer game and that as well, is that we're not very good at shouting. We write because we have ideas and are quite, I suppose, humble in a way. I mean, not all writers are like that, but a lot of us are quite sort of like, just we like it and it's interesting and it's fun, and you know, do you like it as well? But we kind of cringe when people go, I'm not so sure. So we don't shout about our work. And if we did shout about our work, we'd be like stock traders, wouldn't we? Making like millions, selling stocks and shares, or being in a marketing team or a sales team, but we're not. So yeah, it's very hard to keep up that level of, look at me, buy my stuff, I'm amazing. But
It's true though. We're all like that. All writers, well, most writers, I shouldn't say all, we're wrapped up in our own shells and like in our own little cocoons, and we type the words and we send the words, and then we just go back under our blankets and we type more words, and that's it. Because when you do market yourself, yeah, you feel like you sound arrogant, which you're not. And there are some people that they don't have that feeling whatsoever, and I envy those people. But I think it's easier to market for other people than it is for yourself, which brings us back to the whole engaging thing, because obviously if you're reading other people's work and you're talking to them, and then they might read your work, and if they enjoy it, they'll tell people about it. And it's all word of mouth in the end.
yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. Yeah. But like we said, it's just keeping up with it, isn't it? It's keeping on top of everything. And I mean, for me, with the reading side of things, I love, and to bring it back to Wattpad, I love to read some people's stories. Maybe this is me being a bit unfair, being effectively an indie author myself, is that, you know, if I've got half an hour free, do I read someone's work on Wattpad? Do I go to my to be read pile and read some of a book been published? I hate to say it, and it's probably not fair to say it, but I go to my TBR pile and I pick up a book and I read the next chapter of that, because I know it's been published and or I've seen reviews for it, or it's something that I know I'm going to like. But that said, I've had all the time in the world. I actually had, interesting enough, had a period, and it's not really interesting, but I'll say it anyway. I had a period where my wife didn't drive, and she worked in the centre of the city centre. We don't live in the city centre. She works in the city centre, and we live in a village. We used to get the train in, but the train, you can get the train from our village. You got the train from a town near us. When I finished work, I'd wait for her train, and in waiting for a train, I always had 10 minutes just sitting there with a phone, and I would get Wattpad out, and I would just read some stuff on Wattpad, and that's one way I was engaging with people. Now she can drive, she doesn't work in the city, and you know, I'm working a slightly different job and I have longer hours, and suddenly just that 10 minutes completely not been eroded. You know, I've lost that time to engage with people, and it's not really very much. Do you think 10-15 minutes a day? Actually finding that time it's nigh impossible, really.
Definitely, because our lives are just so crammed with other things, and it's like it's like, oh, only 10 minutes, but then it's never just 10 minutes, because even if you try, you know, you might end up getting down a rabbit hole and thinking, well, I better check Twitter now, and I better check Instagram, and oh, I need to read several people's blogs, and I'm behind with the YouTube videos, and suddenly you could have lost 3 hours that you could have been writing it.
Yeah, but since I've been off of work, so I finished on Thursday, and again, I finished early when this podcast we in the summer holidays when this podcast out, I would presume, but at the time it's not quite the summer holidays yet for most schools in the UK, and I've worked Saturdays, so that's why I get the extra time off, because I work on a Saturday as well, and therefore I've been off for 4 or 5 days. Obviously my kids have been off at the weekend, so that kind of nullifies that, because they're always daddy, can you do this, can you do that? But I've been off for 4 days now where they've been at school, and then you're like, well, actually, you know what, I'm going to sit down, I've got the story I've printed out that I finished. I finally start editing that on the printout version, because I've done the editing on the computer. I'm going to work on this story, I'm going to do that for my writing as well. I had a bit of a poem that I was halfway through, I thought I'd finish that, and since I've been off work, it's like, oh yeah, I haven't made the garden for a month because I've been busy with work. We were halfway through putting some wallpaper up. Then there's like, well, actually, like you said, there was a couple of things on YouTube I wanted to catch up on. There were, I actually had about 2 or 3 episodes of Mary White Write a podcast that I hadn't listened to. Started doing all that.
Oh, offended.
Please be. And so I did all that, and I caught that up. But you were before my writing, put it that way. Listening to you was more important than me doing writing. And then I've done all that, and now I've got to this point, and I'm like, oh, I've been like 4 or 5 days off, and I haven't done anything writing related. And then I looked at the hedge outside my house this morning. I was like, oh, that's the next job. I need to cut that. It's never ending, is it?
No, there's always something.
It's kind of depressing a bit, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
We do our best, though. We try. That's all anyone can ever ask for.
I personally think the only reason my blog gets any traction anymore is because the Mary Write podcast goes up on it every week. So I don't have to think about making weekly content or bi-weekly content anymore. It's just like, as long as the podcast is up, somebody will, at least it's creating some form of consistency.
See, consistency. There we go.
Yeah. I like into another little secret about the Merry Writer on Twitter game as well. I've not done a few of them. And it's all because I'll look at it in the morning, and sometimes you get a nice easy question. You like to pose a nice easy question like, what would your character's favourite food be? And you go, actually it'd be that. And they're really good questions. They make you think and develop your character. And sometimes you have one of those questions and it's like, I need to think about that a little bit more. I'll come back to it later. And then I just don't come back to it because I don't have the time. And then the next day I'm like, did I fill that yesterday's in? Have I done today's? What? I don't know what's going on. That's life.
We don't even play it at the moment. I don't think I've answered any of the questions in months. No. We're too busy.
Are hard.
Yeah.
Like, coming up with the questions is the hardest thing.
It was the Shakespeare play one. The other day, the Shakespeare play, I was just like, what Shakespeare plays do I know? Every Shakespeare play possible had just gone out of my head.
That was Ari's question. Blame her.
Yeah. And then I was like, what happens in a novel? What happens? I mean, like this happens, that happens. And I was like, and then she kind of gets stabbed in the back, and I went, Julius Caesar, he gets stabbed in the back. Let's go for that.
Perfect.
Chris, it has been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to just share a little bit about yourself with our listeners? Throw in some links, things like that.
Thanks for having me again. It's been great fun. So yeah, just to let you know a bit about me. My name is Chris Harvey. I'm a teacher. I originally from Guernsey in the Channel Islands, but I now live up in Yorkshire, in England. I count myself as a hobbyist writer because I'm obviously mainly a teacher. Well, I'm a teacher. But first and foremost, I tend to write sci-fi and fantasy young adult novels. But I have written some books for younger children. Okay, some younger chapter books. Some of those will be coming out soon, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I have written some stuff for maybe more for adults, but if I release them, they won't be under my name because I'm a teacher. And I don't think I can release anything too gory. So I would say, though, that my collection of writing is quite eclectic. I probably don't do anything well, but I do a lot of stuff. But sort of the main books that I've got out at the moment, which you can buy on Amazon, are a comedy fantasy novella, which is in a moustache. It may sound a bit weird, but it was inspired by November, which is sort of charity where men grow moustaches in November. They're supported by women. I mean, if women want to grow moustaches if they can, that's up to them. But it's all to raise money for kind of research and treatment and male health issues. So I wrote a book about that. I was planning on selling it and to make money, but then I realised it was better just for me to donate a load of money. So I donated money, basically because the book wasn't finished on time. Donated the money and now got it out as a book. And I've also got a book called World Cup Dreams, which is a set of short stories or poems for every day of it. I wrote it in the 2012 FIFA World Cup, so that's out there as well. I've also got work on Smashwords, on Wattpad, obviously, as we've been talking about. And I think that because of Smashwords, there's stuff all over the place on Barnes and Noble and things like that. What I will say is, and I'm generally honest here, being a hobbyist writer, I can't afford all amazing things like editors and cover designers and things, but I'm learning a lot and I'm improving. So I don't think my books are terribly written or terribly edited, but I'm not going to guarantee they're the best. I do teach IT and computing, so my covers are okay. But if you do want to read any of my stuff, then obviously Wattpad, Smashwords, Amazon, or head to my website, which is at harveycd.wordpress.com. If I ever put anything up about books, I always post a blog out on it, and there's all links to all my work there. The one thing I'm really after, this is my play, is reviews. I don't care if the reviews are rubbish. Just knowing that someone's read it and thought about my book is enough for me. I've got a few on Goodreads and I've got one or two on Amazon, but if you want to read and review my books, I will be eternally grateful.
That is brilliant. And as always, all links to websites, including Amazon, Smashwords, and social media, will be in the description below. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Do let us know if you have ever used Wattpad or if you are now considering doing so. We'd love to hear from you. Put it in the comments on Twitter using the hashtag #TheMerryWriterPodcast. If you want to get yourself some extra content, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TheMerryWriterPodcast. You can support our show for as little as $1 a month and get yourself some extra bonus content. Tune in next week for another episode of the Merry Writer Podcast, where we ask all the right questions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
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 This podcast is brought to you by Felt Tip Pens. We love to colour code. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.